And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Ambassador Wing. Hope y'all are having a great Sunday afternoon and back with a brand new installment of Modern Pop Review. And today, I'm going to be continuing my review of the series Obi-Wan Kenobi, and my discussion on episode 4. But before we get into that, if this is your first visit to the Ambassador Wing, welcome, welcome. Hope you enjoy your time here. Hope you enjoy the stream. Hope you enjoy the discussion. And if this is, in fact, your first visit, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and become a part of this growing community, the Ambassadorial Wing, where, as the intro says, we discuss, we debate, and we celebrate pop culture. And to kind of get into this, episode 4, it was interesting. Not everything that I was expecting, but by no means a letdown by any stretch. So, but want to send a shout out to the chat to all of you who are lurking out there in internet land, whether you're watching this on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitter. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I want to say hello to a longtime friend, a member of the Council of Ones, Mountains of Elysium. Good to see you, buddy. And Jake Ironside, good to see you too as well, bud. Won't be able to stay long. Wanted to drop in and give a like to the stream. Alicia, my friend, it is good to see you, bud. Appreciate you stopping in, even if it's for just a little bit. So, but to kind of get into the nitty gritty of this, because we don't stand on the whole lot of ceremony. Yes, obviously, brand new intro for the channel and everything. I put a lot of work into this, and I hope y'all appreciate it. I hope y'all like it. I hope it adds a little more pizzazz to what we're doing here at the, well, as a good friend of mine said, the A Wing, the Ambassadorial Wing. Let's get into the discussion. And if any of you are in the chat, want to join me this afternoon, I am going to pop the link in. So it will be there for anyone that wants to use it. If you want to join for the discussion on Obi-Wan Kenobi, it will be available here in just a moment. So just bear with me a minute and I will get that in the chat. And there will be much rejoicing. Yay. So, but yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi, episode 4. Where do I begin? This is the rescue mission. This is Obi-Wan going to save Princess Leia. Well, yeah, a young Princess Leia, obviously. And this is going to be a little bit of a different reaction from me that I would normally give, because while I did enjoy this episode, there was one particular element of this episode I had some issues with. And you all know me. Those of you that tune in on the regular know that I give an honest take. I tried to look at the good and everything, and most times I can find good. And there is, don't misunderstand me, there is a lot of good in this episode. But something that was just very, very cringy and honestly has become a little bit more of a glaring problem is Inquisitor Reva. I did not care for how she acted in this episode. I did not care for her dialogue in terms of how she talked to Princess Leia. Because honestly, it was cringy, and honestly, it was like a bad it's like dialogue you would hear like in a bad TV movie. I mean, she did not come off as intimidating. She didn't even necessarily come off as all that menacing. She came off as smarmy. She came off as slimy. She came off as out of her depth. I mean, she's dealing with a child, and the dialogue is just cringeworthily bad. Now, aside from that, the episode, me and Madman Bastard both watched it, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. But I want to start off with some negative critique for this, because thus far, and here's another thing that I I've been trying to give them the benefit of the doubt on, and that is Reva's motivation. We don't know it, and we are 4 episodes into a 6 episode series. We do not know Reva's motivation, why she is doing what she's doing, aside from gaining the position of Grand Inquisitor. And for me, this is a problem. Now, with the other Inquisitors and obviously with Vader, we know their motivation. We know that the fifth brother wants to become Grand Inquisitor, that he is actually next in line. We know Vader's motivation. He wants Kenobi. He wants revenge. But with Reva, if she's thus far, she has been the villain that has had the most screen time. And thus far, I have become somewhat disconnected with her. Now, Ewan McGregor's performance thus far in the series has been rather good. And I have enjoyed rejoining Kenobi in this particular phase in his life. I have enjoyed Vivian Lyra Blair's performance as young Leia. The rest of the supporting cast is fine. The other characters, everything, the side characters, they've been fine. But this is something that is very much lacking with this series. You can have multiple antagonists. That's not a problem, but you need to give these antagonists a motivation for why they're doing what they're doing. And we haven't gotten that. Not to mention, we have not gotten any type of background on why Reva ended up where she is as an Inquisitor for the Empire, working directly for Vader. And that's an issue with this series. Because we've had 4 episodes and still we have no idea except for some vague allusion to Reva having a beef with Kenobi or having a beef with the Jedi. Now, there is some dialogue between Reva or from Reva to Leia there at the Fortress Inquisitorius. But that's not enough. Now, I do my best to call balls and strikes. I try to play evenly and I try to be fair in my criticism. But Reva is an issue with this series. Now, I'm not saying Moses Ingram is doing necessarily a bad job, but the dialogue they gave her for this particular episode just fell flat. I mean, at least in the previous episode, she came across as driven. She came across as a bit maniacal. But in this episode, even Leia was not intimidated by her. Now, she was frightened, absolutely, when she was taken into the torture chamber, and that's a rational reaction to a situation like that. But Reva herself did not intimidate Leia. And Leia is a small child. She's 10 years old. And the line that she gives when Reva's trying to probe her mind with the Force, she's like, is this just supposed to be a staring contest? I won't lie, I laughed, because it sounds like something that, well, the late, great Carrie Fisher, when she portrayed Leia, might have said. And I will say this. Vivian Lyra Blair, granted, this is my first time seeing her perform as an actress in any role. I know she's done other series and everything in her short career, and from what I hear, she's done rather well. But she has been good in this series as well. She has very much encapsulated the late Carrie Fisher's performance as Princess Leia. She even bears a slight resemblance to a young Carrie Fisher. And I think that was a good move on the part of Lucasfilm to cast someone that did bear a resemblance to Carrie Fisher at this age in her life, at around 10 years old. But Reva just, I don't want to harp on this because I do want to move on to other points and everything of things that I did enjoy in the episode. But at this point, I'm kind of checked out in terms of my investment in Reva as a character. Now, I'm going to finish the series because I have enjoyed it. But they really, really, really got to stick the landing in terms of Reva. And they've also, and this is something me and Matt Baxter talked about earlier today, and that is the lack of involvement of Hayden Christensen in his role as Vader. Now, we saw him at the end of episode 2 in the prosthetic makeup, and we saw him in episode 3 there on Mapuzo in that vision that Obi-Wan has of him before he goes into the suit. But as we have been told by Lucasfilm, it has been stunt performers that have been in the suit in the fight scenes, or the fight scene that was done between Obi-Wan and Vader. Now, from what we understand in terms of the production, Ewan and Hayden had been working on choreography for a fight scene in this series. So my guess is more than likely either the 5th episode or the 6th episode, we will probably get another showdown between these two. And I would imagine probably at this point, it'll be Hayden Christensen who comes in and everything, who will be in the suit this time. And that is my legitimate hope. I hope that they are able to nail this part of the series. But this is essentially Obi-Wan infiltrating the Fortress Inquisitorius to save Leia. And it's a very tense episode, particularly because it picks up right where we're left off from episode 3. And the rebel cell has gotten Obi-Wan off Mapuzo. They've taken him to Jabim. They've got him in one of their headquarters, and they've got him in a bacta tank. Now, I will say that particular part of the episode, that very brief flashback or flash between Obi-Wan and Anakin in their respective, or well, not Anakin, but Vader in their respective bacta tanks. That was actually a pretty cool sequence. It really, really was. I did enjoy that sequence. And we do see Obi-Wan in this episode, his connection to the Force starting to reemerge in a more pronounced way. And we also see him transferred into some costuming that's more reminiscent of what he would have worn as a Jedi Knight during the time of the Republic. Everything when he was a member of the Jedi Order. And I will also say this: the lady that played Melisandre in Game of Thrones, who plays Tala, the turncoat Imperial officer who now works with the rebellion. Her performance is actually rather good too, and not to mention her infiltration, her putting on the air of a Imperial officer was actually rather good. I did have one minor criticism, and this is something else other people have pointed out, and that is when she's busting out and everything of the chamber where Reva confronts her, and she does an open palm slap to a stormtrooper in his helmet. That broke the immersion a little bit for me because that shouldn't have worked as well as it did. Because I studied the design of stormtrooper armor. An open palm slap or punch and everything isn't going to cause that much damage, not much less incapacitate a stormtrooper. Now, smack him with a baton like Jyn Erso did in Rogue One, yeah, maybe, but not just an open palm slap. That just didn't work for me. But the whole part of them infiltrating the Fortress Inquisitorius, that was actually a really intense sequence. I enjoyed that a great deal as a Mam Ambassador because we did watch this episode together, as we have the entire series. And in terms of how they crafted the infiltration sequence, It had a good amount of tension. The Seeing Obi-Wan, his force ability starting to reemerge was a good touch as well. I mean, he's not back up to his full potential as of yet, or where he was back when he was an active Jedi Knight or Jedi Master, but it was a step in the right direction. It was a good example of good visual storytelling, showing Kenobi's connection to the Force coming back. When he distracts the two stormtroopers, it's a great callback to, um, of course, Obi-Wan being infiltrating the Death Star in Episode 4, A New Hope. Um, the lightsaber combat, well, in terms of him using his saber again and everything in a more proficient way, in terms of combating stormtroopers, deflecting blasters, killing stormtroopers in general. That scene where he goes into the interrogation chamber to save Leia because he finally locates her or hears her screaming for help. That itself was a really awesome sequence. I will not lie. And that the reunion between the two of them, while brief, she's like, they told me you were dead, and he's like, really? And she's like, I didn't really think you were. So, and to the chat, Sleepy Collectibles, Sleepy, it's good to see you. Hope you're having a good Sunday afternoon. Appreciate you popping in this afternoon. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Um, I mean, obviously, this is a shorter episode than what we've gotten before. It's only about 30 some odd minutes. I would have preferred it to be a bit longer, but I can live with a shorter episode provided because the first 3 episodes were 40 minutes plus. So that for me is a minor critique. The one thing I will say, and this is also a little bit of a criticism that I have with these Disney Plus series. I really wish they were longer than 6 episodes or 7 episodes or 8 episodes or whatever. I don't know if this is a matter of budgeting or scheduling or whatever the case may be, but I feel like this series should have been at least 8 episodes, if not possibly 10. Because I, I as I mentioned before, we have not gotten any real concrete motivation as to why Reva is doing what she's doing. We know everybody else's motivations, but we haven't gotten any backstory on Reva whatsoever. We know where the fifth brother and the other female inquisitor come from, what their purpose is, but we really haven't gotten any background on Reva. And I don't want to harp on this because we're gonna talk about various other points in this episode. But I hope going forward, and if anybody at Lucasfilm is listening, please, for the love of heaven, make these series longer. Add more episodes so we get more time with these characters. We get more character development. Because 6 episodes is just not enough to establish a world, establish your characters, establish their motivation, and everything else that goes along with that. You need more time. You can make the episodes longer, sure, that's not a bad thing, but it's a little bit of a bother for me that we're only getting 6 episodes in this series when I feel like there has been a lot that has not been fully explored or explained. Now, the one thing I will remark on, another thing I will remark on, let me put it that way, is Vader. And I think it's episode 2. Yeah, it's episode 2 when he's talking to Reva. He's like, "You know the price for failure. I don't tolerate it. You will not live long enough to live with your failure." And here, now I've heard some reasonable explanations for why Vader reacted the way he did once Reva revealed that she has a tracker on Kenobi, and we discovered that it's actually the little droid Lola that Leia carries around with her everywhere. That is the tracker. But Vader came back from his rage just a little too quickly for me. Even though she used a good deal of cunning and she impressed him, we have seen Vader in other media, comics, video games, and so on, just stone cold execute a person for failing in the slightest. I mean, for those of you that have played Jedi Fallen Order, granted, the sixth sister, I believe her name is, brings Cal Kestis and Seer to the Fortress Inquisitorius with the Jedi holocron that contains all of the Jedi names. And he just straight up executes her there on the spot and then chases them both down. It bothers me just a little bit that Vader would be this lenient, even though he's like, okay, we'll play it your way. So, but I want to give a warm welcome to a regular here on the Ambassador Wing. He has earned the title of Ambassador, as many others have. So, welcome, my friend, your friend. You know him, you love him, Mr. Zach Leary.
What's up, Ambassador? How are you?
I'm doing okay. Zach, how are you, bud?
Yeah, not bad.
So I don't know how much you've heard of my discussion thus far, but
nothing.
Oh, okay.
I saw you were live. I jumped right on here.
Okay, well, we're talking Kenobi episode 4. So, well,
that I know about. I'm a very opinionated guy, as you know.
Yes,
I've got quite a bit to say about this one, but I certainly don't want to stifle your flow. So continue from where you were going.
Well, to kind of bring you up to speed, I have got some gripes. Believe it or not,
interesting.
I have.
So do I.
I have some gripes with this episode, and I'll give you a quick recap of my take, and then we can go from there. You can respond with how you feel. One of my big critiques is Reva's performance in this episode. I was not impressed with her dialogue or her acting in terms of her interrogation of Leia. She came off, to me at least, as like a bad movie villain, not a intimidating character in an established universe. I mean, for Pete's sake, let me just put it to you this way. When I'm more intimidated by General Grievous than Reva, that's saying something.
Okay. Well, first of all, how dare you? I adore General Grievous. Always have.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I adore General Grievous as well, but that's my point. I find him a purely CGI character more intimidating and his dialogue more believable and more intimidating than the interrogation sequence between Reva and Leia. And
Grievous, let me just say this about him. You don't get that many opportunities to talk about him. One of my all-time favorite characters. But I totally get what you're saying. But Grievous, though, has such a tragic backstory.
He does,
which is what kind of makes him an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, it's also interesting just by the fact of what they did to him from the cartoon to the movie, where he was this badass and they just, nerfed him. But
yeah, no, I got
you. So she has kind of a Captain Hook kind of feel to you.
Actually, I found Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook rather charming, somewhat likable, rather mischievous. I like Captain Hook. Reva in this episode, I found her laughable. And not in a good way. This is an Inquisitor for the Empire. This is an Inquisitor that works for Vader. And she can't... Now, and I will say this, and I do not call this the Mary Suing of Leia. Because it was established in Episode 4, New Hope, that she could resist mind probes. Now, granted, we didn't know at the time that she was force sensitive or anything of the kind. But I do not find that leap in the logic of her passively being able to resist um Reva's mind probe, and she's like, "What is this, a staring contest?" I love
Yeah,
that
at
line.
10 years old, though, it's like, it's difficult, to make that connection, when she's 10
Yeah.
years old. Is that what you're saying, or you thought it was good?
No, I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay because I find it believable. I don't find it to be an issue for me because if you understand force abilities, resisting a mind probe is more of a passive ability rather than something that you're trained in. Now, you can train to hone it better, but I get the impression that Reva's force abilities are not all that. I mean, she's not bad, but there are others out there that are far more powerful than she is. I think if maybe one of the other Inquisitors, or maybe even the Grand Inquisitor, had been interrogating Leia, they may have been able to break through. The only time that Leia is even remotely frightened of Reva is when she's taken into the interrogation chamber and they strap her into that torture device. That's the only time that Leia
Right.
shows any real fear towards Reva whatsoever. So, yeah, for me, Reva in this episode, I didn't care for her. And the other big critique I had was we still do not know her motivation. That for me is a problem, and a major one. We are 4 episodes into a 6 episode miniseries, and we still don't know what Reva's motivation is. We get some allusions, but we never get anything concrete in the dialogue that she shares with Leia. And that for me is an issue. Because when she
Well,
is seemingly your let me just say this real quick. When
yeah.
she is seemingly your primary antagonist in this series, and we still don't know why she's doing what she's doing, to me, that's bad storytelling. So
Well,
anyway, Zach, go ahead.
I made a joke backstage in the private chat in one of these Kenobi episodes on your channel that Moses Ingram is a student of the Chris Pratt School of Acting, which is what I call blank face acting, and that's a real technique. It's not that it's actually a very popular technique, and a
Mhm.
lot of major actors use this technique where you leave little facial expression as possible. That way, the audience can infer what the character is thinking and how they feel. Right? I'm not a fan of this approach. But it seems to me that is kind of the method she has used for the character, where there's very little expression, and it seems to be, if the same expression, if it's threatening, if it's getting talked down to by Vader, whatever it is, it's just a blank
Mhm.
expression.
Yeah.
So I see what you mean, but see, the weird thing about all this is that we're not even allowed, to question the acting abilities of the actress. Um, but for
I
me, the whole episode is kind of a mess. Okay, just the concept of having Kenobi break into this giant fortress
mhm.
by himself with the help of one individual is pretty far fetched. And by the way, if they used that Imperial cloaking, whatever it is, signal from the Tala, the traitor, right, or the officer, the
Mhm.
defector.
Yeah. Mhm.
How the fuck did the other two people get down there in two little ships? How'd they get past the entire fucking fleet up there?
Well, here's the thing: there isn't a fleet orbiting
There's at least two
Nur.
ships. At
No,
least, yes, there is.
they did not show any ships. They did not mention any ships in the briefing before they even go to Nern to the
I don't
Fortress
believe so.
Inquisitorius.
I think she says my code can get us through or something. In
Yeah,
Fallen Order,
can get her into the fortress itself. But here's the thing: this is Vader's system. Fear alone is going to tell everybody, do not come near the system unless you want to die. This is the fortress. This is the headquarters for the Inquisitors. It is a neighbor planet to Vader's fortress on Mustafar. It's
yeah,
Nern. Nern
I
is
don't
in the
know.
Mustafar is in the same system. So, and they did not, and I do not recall whatsoever them mentioning there being any ships in orbit. They do not even show any ships in orbit that I recall anyway. But at this point, Tala's cover had not been blown that she was in fact a defector. It isn't. It doesn't happen until Reva interrogates her. Now that exchange right there was a
Well, let me
little bit
finish.
better.
Let me finish that point
Sure.
off.
Yeah. Sure.
Is
Go ahead.
so I know that in Fallen Order you have two Star Destroyers orbiting the moon. I believe it's a moon, something like that. Nur.
Uh,
Um,
no, it's Nur or Nern. I can't remember exactly which.
well, but
But
regardless, there's at
mhm,
least in Fallen Order you have two Star Destroyers, which
mhm.
still is kind of a limited number of troops. I mean, for such a top secret and highly important location, you would expect there to be some other defenses put into it. And to me, it kind of, not to be a nitpicky guy or anything, but
No.
it provides the location with easy access from a script writing point of view, which is not as logical or story driven point of view. Um, where it's like, yeah, let's make this easy to get to for our characters. It's like I don't really like that kind of a approach. You can go a little bit more, into it. Like I thought Kenobi would pull the Luke card and dress up as a stormtrooper. No, he's going to walk through there in Jedi robes. What the fuck?
I I get what you're saying, but for me, it wasn't an issue because he's sneaking in through an exterior access point, much like Shandoka brings this up as well. Because I think you've said you played Jedi Fallen Order. If Cal Kestis, the with Padawan level training, could get in and tell the tale of the Jedi Master like Obi-Wan Kenobi, even if he's rusty, he still has the capability.
Okay,
I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying from a storytelling perspective, but for me, in terms of the story, it didn't break the immersion for me. It didn't seem far fetched or out of the realm of reasonability within this universe.
you
So,
think I just think it would be a little bit more well defended. I mean, if I was Palpatine and had 50,000 ships, you better believe there'd be a blockade of my
but
top secret research base.
but here's the thing, Zach, and I don't know if maybe you're just missing what I'm saying. This is in the Mustafar system. This is Vader's system. He owns it, and it would have been made pretty much public knowledge to put fear in the general populace of the Empire and the other systems. Don't come here unless you want to die.
Well, it's like the Germans leaving Berlin undefended. Do I really? You know what I'm saying? It just from a tactical perspective doesn't work. It's like, yeah, just
But
come on
from
by. We've got no defenses.
Yeah, but here's the thing. At this point, who's really going to challenge them? The rebellion isn't even fully organized at this point. There's scattered cells everywhere. They're not organized into any meaningful military force. So yeah, they can afford not to have 20 or 30 ships orbiting Nern. I mean, there's not even ships orbiting Mustafar for Pete's sake. For one thing, it's of little strategic value. It's a volcanic world. It's where Vader has his fortress.
Well, it's of a tremendous strategic value because think of it: if Vader gets killed, you're fucked. I mean, that's
Yeah, but
Palpatine's main guy.
who's gonna go in there and face down Vader?
Well,
There's
Vader,
nobody in there's no
you
one in
could
the
blow him up,
rebellion.
But okay, but Vader is the queen to Palpatine's chessboard. He
Yeah,
needs
and
Vader.
no one's gonna screw with Vader. No one's that dumb and no one's that suicidal. No one, as I said, at this point, this is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. The rebellion is not a threat whatsoever at this point. Now, they were a threat in Rogue One, most definitely. And they were starting to become a threat by the time Rebels and everything had come out and everything are in the status of the universe. The rebellion was more of a threat then in Rebels. But at this point, they're like Yeah, yeah, go ahead, come here. We'll blast you out of the sky, or you're going to end up dead if you try to storm this fortress. Because we've got not only stormtroopers, we've got purge troopers, and we also have inquisitors here. And Vader is just a hop, skip, and a jump, quite literally, away from this planet. He hops in his fighter. He's there in a heartbeat. Well, maybe more than a heartbeat, but at the same time, no one's going to be that monumentally dumb to try and storm the Fortress Inquisitorius. Because fear of the Empire is still a very real thing. There has been nobody that has stepped up to try and challenge them. At this point, the few rebel cells that are in operation are doing good just to get Jedi and other refugees clear of the Empire itself. They're in no real condition to um, be a threat to the Empire. The Empire is the big dog on the block thus far.
Well,
No one's
you
going to
know,
screw with them.
you get my points.
No, I
Okay,
get your
so
point. I totally get your point. I understand what you're saying from a storytelling perspective.
at the very least, you know, would I be concerned about the Jedi coming back or trying to get some form of revenge or something?
No, because Jedi don't seek revenge.
They totally did. They wanted Luke to murder Darth Vader.
That's not so much revenge. That's them trying to reestablish balance in the Force. That, for me, is not a form of revenge.
Well, the Sith
They're,
being extinct is not balance, right?
no, because what you have in the person of Luke Skywalker by the time of the events of Return of the Jedi or post Return of the Jedi, this is a Force wielder who isn't necessarily. He's more somewhere in the middle, how a true Force wielder should be. But we're kind of getting off on a
Yeah, we're getting a
tangent
little
here.
bogged down here.
So,
But there's little details that irritate me with this episode, like Kenobi
yeah.
walking out with Leia under his coat is goofy.
That did seem a little goofy, I will admit. But again, it did not break the immersion for me. Because how else are they going to get her out?
I don't know. And people, you know, they say how badass certain sequences in this were. It didn't ring. It rang hollow when Kenobi shows up and he beats up the stormtroopers. Cool, but you know, why aren't their heads flying off?
Well, because Kenobi isn't trying to go for a decapitation. He's trying to get them quick and clean. And he gets them quick and clean. A few swings of
Well,
his saber, and those two stormtroopers are down for the count in the interrogation chamber. And I will say this: the sequence where he's telling Tala and Leia to get down the hallway while he's trying to hold that uh, that window pane together through the Force,
which they
and then
borrowed from Fallen Order, by the way.
well, actually, I think this is an explanation as to how that section of the fortress got flooded. I think this is them showing how that particular section of the fortress got flooded that Cal has to go through. So, which again is a nice little callback to, well, how in the world did a Imperial fortress get damaged? Now we know why, or how at least. So, but the other criticism that I had was the length of the episode. It was only like it was a little over 30 minutes, and I spoke to this before you came in, Zach. I know you have your own critiques in terms of the pacing of the different episodes and tying them up together. I would prefer that this series had been at least 8 episodes, because I feel like there's a lot of story that has been cut out for the sake of time. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to finish the series. I have enjoyed the series thus far. I am invested in it, but I just, and this kind of goes for some of the other Disney Plus series across the board. They feel too short.
I don't agree with you. Saying that we had, you know, stuff that was probably cut out, I don't think so. I mean, think of all the meaningless stuff we've been through so far. The fake Jedi is a totally pointless dead end. Is it fun? Is it funny? Is it a little comedy thing? Sure, but you can have Obi-Wan and Leia steal a ship and save 25 minutes or whatever it is. Vader himself says in the next episode, the Grand Inquisitor means nothing. Then why the fuck was he in the show? I mean, look, this show could have been cleaned up. It could have been focused, and let me just ask you, what is the character arc in this? I mean, not based on what you would like or what you think they're doing, but based on what you're seeing. What in the fuck is the story they're telling here?
This is Kenobi's reconnection to the Force. This is telling the period of his life between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, telling a chapter in his life, not telling the entire chapter of his life. It's also establishing the shape of the universe at this time in the Star Wars universe. And it's also establishing the early formation of the rebellion. And that for me is a story that I have wanted to see. And I think for more or less, for the most part, let me put it that way, for the most part, they have told that story with a level of competency and a level of enjoyment that I appreciate. Is it perfect? No, because I've stated that there have been issues, and I think particularly in this episode that have become rather glaring. But aside from those issues, I have enjoyed the story that has been told, and I will finish it to the end.
I
And that's
don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but I will find you and I will kill you. That's what this is. It's Taken, right?
I don't see it that way.
All right.
I don't.
I put a video in the private chat if you want to play it. It's, I think, 20 seconds.
If it's the scene that you just quoted,
It's not. No.
So, well, can you at least tell me what it is?
Yeah, it's me talking about a particular thing of Kenobi.
Okay. All right.
This last episode fits in perfectly.
Okay. I'll bring it up happily. So just give me a second. And I do want to say hello to the chat. Garglosaurus RS. Good to see you, buddy. Appreciate you being here last night. And hang on. Okay, hang on.
Well, I do want to just say, though, I know it seems like I'm bitching and complaining, and I am kind of, but...
Yeah, well, I am too. Don't misunderstand me, Zach. I mean, you didn't get here for when I really started in. So hang on. I got your clip up here. 1 second. Okay. Screen share. Share audio. I wouldn't call it necessarily worst choreography, but let's hear what you have to say.
All right, we got to get views, man. That's how it works.
No, I know. It's fine, bud. So, all right. Floor is yours, Mr. Leary.
Somehow Kenobi evades two approaching stormtroopers that look like they're literally 10 feet away from him. Guys, he's right there. There he is. How did they not see him? All right. There you go. That's it. Okay, so there's little things like that. This fight scene. You can cut it off there.
Well, this was embarrassing
too. Kenobi is running, and this one drives me crazy. It's like he's going for a brisk jog. I mean, look at this. Here's another question: why wasn't some of this stuff reshot? Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is, if you're going to show the troopers coming after him, why show the troopers in the same shot as his escape or his hiding? You know what? Why do the same shot? You show the troopers in a separate shot and he jumps in, and then after he's gone, the troopers come into that shot. Just like, come on now. That's 101 stuff.
He did the same thing in episode 4. Just saying.
Tractor beam scene?
He did the exact same thing in episode 4.
Were they facing him?
No, they were not facing him, but he was hiding off to the side just like he was in
Yeah,
episode
you can
4.
hide off to the side, but when they're walking towards you, you can't jump out of the way with your legs sticking out of the thing.
I didn't see his legs sticking out.
I did a little circle and a ding, check ding.
I may have
He's
missed it.
yeah. Well, it's just it could have been done more carefully. Okay, and these are critiques that are. It's not me bitching and complaining. It's
No.
showing and see the people on the other side of this won't get what criticism really is trying to do. It's trying to be helpful or to point
Yeah.
out, look, you could have done this better. You could
Yeah.
have done this differently. And they really should be more open to feedback as a company. And I would say the other side of the fan base should be a little bit more open-minded. I'm
I would,
open-minded. You're
I
open-minded. I think most of even your hardcore fans are open-minded. We just want
yes.
it to be good.
For me, it has been good. I mean, aside from Reva, the series has been good. I mean, I'll bring up Shindoko's comment here. Yeah, we slowly see Kenobi gain a bit more hope. He went from being reluctant to save Leia to going out of his way to break into the Inquisitor's home base, all while regaining his skills. Yeah, I think that's a pretty succinct breakdown of the episode and everything in the series thus far. Now, you bring up the issue of critique versus just blatant hate. I I have set aside, I have moved away from my prequel trilogy stance, not so much my stance, but bashing it at every possible opportunity in a lot of
You
ways.
mean sequel?
Yeah, the sequel trilogy. That's what I meant, sequel trilogy. And I have for the most part, I have given Lucasfilm a second chance, and they have not disappointed me, except for Bad Batch. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, I'm as uninvested as I became in Bad Batch season 1. I don't even necessarily know if I want to try season 2.
I don't blame you. The animation is gorgeous,
The
but aside
animation's
from that,
yeah,
there's nothing to it. I
yeah,
mean, that
it's all style, no substance.
right. I mean, that's another one of those things where I would ask, what is the story to this? Kenobi's journey, it should have been a more personal journey. There's no um
We didn't get enough time with him just on his own. I think
no. Uh,
is that would that be something that you're alluding to?
yeah, I would say we should have more with him on his own. And you
Yeah.
can. Well, did you read what I put in for my opening? If I wrote the opening to this last time I was on here,
Yeah, I read it and I did like it and everything. I did think it had some merit. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not going to say that it's not without merit because as you and I have worked together on various projects and everything behind the scenes and everything, you've put good thought into what you write. Just like I've tried to do the same thing with my script that the missus is still currently working on editing. And no, that's not a dig on her. It's a rather lengthy script, so it's taking her a bit to get through all of it. So,
well,
but
I would say that the the first, or I guess the heart of this show should have been about Kenobi. And I don't
yeah,
believe that it is. It should have been intertwined with his past in a much more concrete way with flashbacks. Okay, the Clone Wars flashbacks really is something that could have done given tremendous strides to character development.
I
Just to
agree.
see the two of them again
Yeah,
is would have been so important, right? And to see them in the uniforms and everything, and just to build upon that relationship, which I think would probably be an even better on-screen chemistry now than it was then.
yes,
So,
I agree.
and there's simple writing things you can do to tie into the present and the past, right? And intertwine them with through metaphor and through other things.
Hmm.
But this is not a show about Kenobi. This is a show about rescuing Leia. so far, okay, which is bizarre on its face. When Leia got thrown into it, everybody kind of said, that's interesting. When I saw little kid Leia, I got a little tear in my eye. It didn't fall out, okay, but a little tear, okay. I think they pulled on our heartstrings throwing her into it, but it's like we're now 4 episodes into it. What is she doing here?
They needed. Now, I know you may disagree with this, but this is my stance on it. They needed. I think you could have still had Leia. You could have still had this arc of him rescuing her from the Empire. But I agree with you that we needed more time with him, just alone, building that solitary nature of his life. Now we got a touch of it in the first 2 episodes, but then
You have to have
he's
action,
often he's
which
often
is
running.
why which is why
Yeah,
I throw the flashback in there. You have to have
yeah,
action, but you can do it with him
yeah,
on Tatooine. Just have him be reflective and take us to the past.
yeah. And we got a touch of that in the first couple episodes, but then that just kind of stops for him going to save Leia from these kidnappers and ultimately saving her from the Empire, or at least from this main Inquisitor Reva. If I was the one that had written this, I would have at least spent at least 2 episodes max, no more than 2 episodes. You could have had other scenes dealing with other parts of the story in this series, but I would have had at least 2 episodes with the screen time and the story focused on Obi-Wan.
Well, doesn't Luke shoot womp rats? Isn't that something he says he does in A New Hope, right?
That was in episode 4. Yeah, it's when it's during the briefing before the attack on the Death Star.
Well,
Um,
here's a scene idea. It's Kenobi and young Luke shooting womp rats. You
well,
can well,
he's
hold on.
shooting them. He shoot to give you full context. He's bullseyeing Womp Rats in his T-16 Skyhopper. He's not doing it with Obi
Oh,
Wan.
it's not a rifle.
No, in that Skyhopper, which you see the little model that he's playing with in episode 4, and you also see one of the engines there in the hallway from the garage going into the main part of the homestead. So
Well,
that's what he
the
was
the
talking
idea that
about.
I had was that, if Kenobi was a great shot,
He
and taught
wasn't.
Luke how to shoot, well, just to allude to there's something unique about Kenobi. You know what I mean? Like give him some kind of great skill where he's not overtly using the Force like a great card player or something like that, you know.
Mm, yeah, but in terms of the story, I'm invested in the story, but I was really hoping, as I said, not to belabor the point, I was hoping we would have had more time with Obi-Wan just on his own. We would have seen his solitary life. We would have seen him more reflected. We would have seen him reflecting on the past. Because this is just 10 years after. I mean, and he had gone through so much trauma in the years before this series. I mean, going through the Clone Wars, going through the fall of the Jedi Order, going through Anakin's fall and his part in it, and him trying to watch over. I would have liked more interaction between him and Owen, except for just those 1 or 2 scenes that we got.
Yeah, that
I
was
would
good
have liked
stuff.
it was,
Yeah.
and that exchange um, between him and Owen was one of the best exchanges in the series thus far. There have been some others, but that was one of the very best. I would have loved to have seen more interaction between him and Owen. I really would have. I would at least love to see Owen, Baru, and Luke and everything. Not even Kenobi there, but see a sequence or a scene and everything with the three of them and how their life is going. Um, and see a young Luke and everything at this point in his life.
Well, okay, let me throw this point at you too. I
Sure.
mentioned this on your last show is
Mhm.
add more panels to the comic. Okay, add more
Yeah.
depth, add more
Yeah.
density to it. Just
Yeah.
throwing in little things can easily make the story seem, it doesn't seem like a vast story, and it should. I mean, we're talking about an epic, legendary character who
Yes.
is, I mean, you're given an epic, legendary character to write for. I think it calls for an epic, legendary story.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
put the Clone Wars flashbacks in there, tie it in metaphors with, Kenobi teaching Anakin some kind of a lesson, and have it be useful to him now, right?
Hmm.
And remembering that now. You could throw Ahsoka into the Clone Wars flashbacks. I think everybody would like that. Um,
The
but,
only pro-
just as an example, to make this thing more vast, throw a couple Palpatine scenes in there. There's many things you could do. You know, um, I don't know. It seems a little bit too small. Kenobi going in, solo to rescue Leia. It doesn't hit me as a big deal.
Well, here's the thing too. They're wanting to keep this operation as small as possible because at this point, like I said, the rebels don't have a whole lot of resources. They've got a couple of speeders that they send in at the last minute to get them clear, and even one of those speeders doesn't come back from the mission. This isn't the Rebel Alliance as we see it in A New Hope, or as we see it in the original trilogy, or as we even see it in other series, or even in Rogue One. This is the infancy of the Rebel Alliance. They don't
It's not
have
what
the
I'm saying.
resources.
It's
Hmm.
not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Um, it's not. There's no tension really. There's no suspense. There's no suspense. Did you feel suspense throughout Kenobi breaking? I didn't.
I
We know
did.
what's
I honestly
okay.
did because here's the thing. If they really wanted to throw this series on its head, really throw this series on its head, they don't get out. They don't get out. They get caught. There's no last minute rescue, or the last minute rescue fails. Because that was always in the back of my mind as I was watching this. Are they actually going to succeed? Are they going to get out? Or are they going to get caught?
I like your idea
Because
better.
hmm,
Yeah, I like that idea better than
because
what we
that
have.
would have really built the tension and everything. Because now you've got Kenobi, you've got Leia stuck in the Fortress Inquisitorius, and that that builds a lot of tension. So now, how are they going to get out of this situation? Because you've got a vast battalion of stormtroopers and even purge troopers. If you notice that one trooper that was in the black armor, that was a purge trooper. Their sole duty or their sole responsibility: hunt down and eliminate Jedi. So that
Well,
that for that the tension was there for me.
let me put it to you this way. Are you a Game of Thrones fan at all?
A little bit. Hang on just a minute, Zach. Go ahead and say your piece or anything. I'm listening, but got something.
Okay. Well, all I'm saying is that it depends on how you shoot the scene and how you have the sequence play out with music and with the cinematography. For me, it seemed kind of bland. I mean, the show is just a little bit bland. And, I said in that little quick 30-second video that Deborah Chow was probably rushed. It seems like a rushed operation.
Sorry, Zach. I caught most of what you were saying. The missus was giving me an update on mom and everything.
Oh,
She's
okay.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Um, I caught the last thing you said in terms of the series being bland. It I don't personally see it that way. I mean, for me, the series has not been by any means bland. The one thing I will say is it's these Star Wars series from the Mandalorian, less with Book of Boba Fett, but Mandalorian, Bad Batch, and now Kenobi.
See, you already forgot about Boba Fett.
No, I haven't forgotten about it, but there isn't this particular formula. It wasn't at play in Book
Okay,
of Boba
okay.
Fett.
Let's see.
The formula that I have seen, and it's not necessarily a bad thing,
Okay.
depending on how you play it. But you've got okay. Let me run it through you this run it by you this way. Mandalorian, Mando, and Grogu. Bad Batch, the Bad Batch, and Omega. Kenobi, Obi-Wan, and Leia. It's a bit it has they've kind of gone with this formula, and it's not necessarily an interesting formula, but you need to do more with it than what has been done necessarily in Kenobi. As I said, you really want to ramp up the tension in this series, have them not escape the fortress. And then you've got the ticking clock of, okay, what the hell's going to happen now? You want to leave it on a cliffhanger. Now, I'm not saying that the cliffhanger that they left it on for this episode wasn't good. It was a interesting cliffhanger. But okay, what the crap's going to happen now? Because now they've got a tracker with Kenobi and Leia, and they're going to be leading them. It's going to lead them straight back to Jabim. Who's going to be heading their way? Is Vader going to be there, or the Inquisitors? Obviously, the Inquisitors will be there most definitely, and not to mention a crap ton of the Imperial Army and everything. At least in that particular sector, they're going to be sending a lot of resources after this rebel cell. But it would have been so much more impactful if maybe Leia and Tala had gotten away, but Kenobi didn't. But instead, everybody gets away. Yeah, you do have a unknown rebel operative or rebel soldier that does die in the process, but I didn't really feel any emotional attachment. Yeah, it's sad that this guy died and everything so they could get away, but at the same time, there are different ways they could have done the conclusion to this episode. The lead up, aside from the interrogation with Reva and Leia, that for me was just it was it was just patently bad. I was not threatened by her. Leia wasn't even necessarily threatened by her until they threw her in the interrogation chamber, as I've mentioned. But it's just I'm wanting more from this, and they're giving me a little bit, but I feel like you're holding back. And it's as you said and everything, you felt like Deborah Chow was being rushed. I don't know when they started production on this series, but you would think they would have given her more time considering, she's done good work in the past and everything with The Mandalorian. And it's almost like they almost reined her in on this series. And I'm like, why are you reining in somebody that you've put so much confidence in the past? And it's kind of bothersome, honestly.
Yeah, I mean the episodes they just don't seem like they're final cuts. Most of them. Like I said, I mean we keep the fact that we're able to point out these little flaws in the episode. I'm sure they see these things too. Um, I guess another possible problem is COVID-19. Is the whole thing was shot during the pandemic, so who knows what kind of stress that puts on a production.
That's true too. That's a lot of these series, unfortunately, were in production when COVID-19 was much more of there in the public consciousness. If you've noticed, COVID-19 has kind of gone the way of the dodo. No one cares anymore. I mean, for all
Right.
intents and purposes, it's kind of back there in the background.
Well,
But
COVID
I
19 has always been a political conversation. It
yeah,
always
it
has been.
has. Yeah, it has more so than anything else. Yeah, I will most wholeheartedly agree with you on that point. So yeah, we don't know what kind of restrictions kept them from telling or doing the production that they really wanted to do. It's almost like, as I said, either there was stuff they didn't shoot, or there was stuff that they shot and they left out for the sake of time constraint. As someone who has, whether it's Star Wars or Marvel, has enjoyed the various Disney Plus miniseries that have come out thus far, most of them have, for me, have been a win. I mean, the one major critique I had with Falcon and Winter Soldier, I enjoyed the series for the most part, but the antagonist, this Coy Morgenthau, who was the leader or the de facto leader of the Flag Smashers, she was not intimidating. I mean, even the Flag Smashers themselves as an organization wasn't necessarily intimidating. They were more of a nuisance than anything else.
Well, for
And
me, the real bad guy of that was the new Captain America, right? Sort of.
yeah, the U.S. agent as he becomes now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I can see your point there, definitely.
See, that guy's got villain charisma
He does,
up and
and
down.
that's yeah, and that's something that's lacking with Reva. She doesn't come off. Okay, let me put it to you this way, and I think this is something we can both agree on. Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin, he was one intimidating SOB. Reva, and she's a force wielder for Pete's sake, and she's not even remotely intimidating. Now, I don't know if it's Moses Ingram's performance or how the character was written or how her dialogue was written, but she has become less and less intimidating as the series has gone on. Whereas the other Inquisitors, granted they don't have as much screen time as her, but the fifth brother, he's intimidating. I would much rather see him be aside from the Grand Inquisitor, which we all know, unless they're going to create one big massive plot hole in terms of the continuity between this series and Rebels. We know that the Grand Inquisitor is alive. He's just convalescing. He's in a bacta tank or something. But Reva is just she has become a detriment to this series and to the story. I have seen bits and pieces of the various series of American Horror Story. I did watch the first season and everything through its conclusion, but I haven't watched anything after that, Zach. So,
Well, let me throw a name out to your audience. Maybe some people will agree with this. Angela Bassett is a tremendous.
oh, I love her she is a great actress.
That's who came
Love
to
her.
mind for this part. When I'm thinking, okay, if I'm recasting, I'd go with Angela Bassett.
Angela, okay, I don't know if you remember this or if you saw it and everything, but she actually played the Queen in Black Panther.
Yeah, well, she's
She
awesome.
played she played T'Challa's mother in Black Panther,
Angela
and actually,
Bassett is awesome,
yeah,
dude.
she is. I will wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. Yeah,
Some of this has to do with like framing and stuff. Like, I've never been a fan of showing your villain like in the spotlight, so to speak, for the
hmm
entire time.
yeah,
Like even showing Reva just in pure broad brightness, right? Give her, put her in a little bit of shadows and stuff. Uh, and I don't know, like just picture the scene of her interrogating Leia, but Reva's like in the shadows of the
of
room.
the
You've got flickering lights and shit. Give us a little suspense, make her a little bit more intimidating. All that shit is camera shots, man. It's like
it's
if you've
mhm.
seen Apocalypse Now, Colonel Kurtz was creepy and scary because he was encased in shadow. He was shot
Hell yeah,
creepily.
yeah. One of my favorite movies. I love Apocalypse Now. Absolutely do. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I love it.
It
Okay,
is
I'll give you.
impossible for words to describe what the word horror means.
I think you did a better job than Brando, even though you were impersonating Brando a little bit there. You know, for those of you that are watching this live, and those of you that'll catch us on the replay, don't misunderstand me. I have my criticisms of this series and of this episode in particular, but I will always be a fan of this universe. You all know this.
That's totally a detriment. As the years have gone by, I would say I'm a fan of nothing. I am a viewer who likes certain things. I think being a fan is a corruptive, a self coating over your eyes that is going to hurt objective thought. So I'm a fan of nothing.
Well, I am a fan, but I can still be objective. That's just how my mind works. So that's just a difference in cognitive processing between you and me. And that's not a bad thing. Because you don't want a bunch of yes men out there or yes women either. And unfortunately, having surrounding yourself with yes people does not allow you to grow constructively or creatively. It just makes you think, well, everything I do is golden. And I think maybe if there had been a little more yes men and yes women around Ryan Johnson, or maybe even J.J. Abrams, a certain trilogy would have turned out a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, well, it happened to George with Phantom Menace.
It did. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. But I think as time has gone on, people have reevaluated the sequel trilogy and they've been able to find good things in it. And they still have their criticisms of it.
Well,
And
episode
that's
one, I think, remains a crappy film with some positive attributes.
yeah, I
Revenge of
agree.
the Sith, however, though, is just a fucking masterpiece.
It is. I don't think you'll find anybody that'll push back on that point. But Zach, I will say this just on a personal level. The fact that you're not a fan, I do not find that to be an issue. You look at things from a different perspective, and it's a perspective that I have come to appreciate. And in our private conversations offline, in our exchanges and so on, I have come to understand you in a way that I didn't understand you several months ago. And that's why I always welcome you here. That's why I welcome anybody who wants to be on these streams with me. Because I want to be able to have stimulating and interesting conversations with people that either share my perspective or have a different perspective.
Well, let me explain it a little bit, and I won't go too far into it, but I abandoned political ideology. Okay, and to me, this was kind of the same thing as shed your political ideology, look at everything objectively. Um, and I guess as a writer, that kind of influences that too, where I am doing my own stuff. It's important for me to be able to look at things without bias, right? Good or bad, right? If Ryan Johnson's new trilogy is the best, set of films of all time, then that's what it is. But yeah, I think this fan narrative is what is killing Star Wars. Is these celebrations and these guys getting dressed up and going down there, and they're too enthused. And I think that does two things. It creates two groups of people who are always going to be disappointed, and it also creates a group of people who are just going to go along with anything.
I do see your point, but fandom does have its place. Because long before the term fandom was even coined, I was a fan of things. Now, granted, I have educated myself. I have broadened my perspective on how films and TV series are made. I've tried to become a better student of the filmmaking process in terms of my own projects that I am working on. But there will always be a part of me that is part of my identity that will be a fan. And I think being a well-informed and a well-educated fan is a good thing. Whereas you have shed your fandom, and that is not without its merit either, because it does allow you a ability to look at things objectively. And that also has its merits.
Well, it's like I did the Stan Lee tweet. I love that man.
Everybody loves that man.
It's
Unless you don't have a pulse. Unless you're
it's
just a complete and total cynic.
well, with I don't think it's exactly what you think it is. I mean, see, if you remove that bias, right, that which is or identity as you call it, it doesn't mean you can't
still feel the way you feel about the things that you enjoy. That's not what it means.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I'm thinking out loud to a certain degree with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, listen, man. End of the day, Kenobi for me has been kind of a sad journey. It started out somewhat promising, and it hasn't gotten better. They've wasted Hayden Christensen to a significant degree.
That I
Um,
agree with. That that for me that was something else I mentioned before you came in. We were told there was going to be this big showdown between Hayden and Ewan McGregor. They even both of them talked about the fact that they were doing fight choreography for this series. And
well, we'll
yet,
get a fight. We'll definitely get another fight.
we will.
But
But
it's like he was the centerpiece of their advertising campaign.
in a lot of ways, yeah, him and Obi-Wan. Yeah. And we've only had two snippets of a scene with him because we've been told, as I mentioned earlier, that was two different stunt performers that were in the suit. It wasn't Hayden.
Seriously.
And
Okay.
I this was another minor this is another minor criticism I had of this episode. I expected Vader to snap Reva's neck. Now that may still happen, but when she said I placed a tracker with them wherever they go, the tracker goes, and he kind of lets her off the hook, and I'm like, we had seen Vader crush people's throats, toss them around rooms, slam them into walls, absolutely cut them to pieces. I mean, even in the Jedi Fallen Order game at the end, after you've defeated the Sixth Sister, and he shows up, he cuts her down just like that. And in this, he's like, we'll play it your way. And I'm like, that bothers me. When he's told her just an episode or so before, you fail me, you die.
The whole thing
Now,
is
granted,
bothersome. These Disney shows are
yeah,
without underlying storylines, dude. There's no substantial like heart to them. It's like Boba Fett is a great example. That's a show about nothing, basically. Is it, again? Does that mean it's the worst show or it sucks? No, I enjoy these shows to a certain extent. Kenobi, to be honest with you, has been my least favorite of them. But it's like Mandalorian. It's a collection of disjointed storylines, kind of. I guess that your start and finish thread line is Mandalorian's relationship with Grogu, but I there's not enough focus on like character development and with these, and I don't know, it lacks a certain finesse.
and I can see that. It's kind of like what I mentioned a little while ago with the formula of the main character having to become the guardian over a younger character. That
Fuck
they're
formulas. I don't like formulas. You know
so
what I'm saying? Why
yeah,
follow a formula? Design a
yeah,
storyline, think about it. They
and then execute it. Yeah,
right, right. I mean, they had like 10 years to come up with a story for Kenobi.
I get the very distinct impression, as you mentioned before, that COVID did play a part in that, as I think it did with a lot of these series thus far. I am hoping that as time goes on, as we get further removed from the whole restrictions that COVID impacted these productions, that the productions will get better. I'm hoping that season 3 of Mandalorian will really deliver something massive on the level, on the level of what we got in season 2. I mean, because as I've mentioned before, you and I look at these series differently. and that's not bad. It's just a differing in perspective.
Well, I said this that the Disney executives remind me of Congress, where fan feedback has little to no impact on what they decide to do. You still have Kathleen Kennedy as head of the studio. You still have Ryan Johnson's trilogy supposedly greenlit. They don't give
It'll
a
never
fuck what
happen.
we think. They don't give a fuck if we don't like this what they do. That bothers me.
Well, to be perfectly candid, at this point, Johnson's series trilogy will never happen.
Well,
Even
Ambassador. When people started criticizing Reva, they said, here was their response: "We're doing a spinoff with her."
I don't know how I feel about that, honestly.
It's a
I
joke.
I hope it's a I she's not a she's not a well developed enough character to want me to invest time in watching a series surrounding her. She really isn't. Now they've even rumored that there might be a season 2 for Kenobi, and I'm like, okay, you're going to have to really give me. I'm going to finish this series. I want to see it through to the end, but I am asking myself, okay, what story are you going to tell in this series? Are you going to focus more on Kenobi in the second season than you did this first one? Are you going to have more character development? Are you going to have him more in seclusion? Or is this, and I hope that this isn't necessarily what they're thinking, him being a cornerstone of the creation of the Rebel Alliance? Because they've already done a story like that in the Force Unleashed games with the character of Starkiller, Galen Merrick, particularly with the first game. And I'll say it, the first two games, granted, I never got a chance to play the second one, but I did watch the cinematics of that game. And the story that was told in both games was actually, I think, very well done. I'm kind of on the fence.
Well, somebody could very easily, you see how Star Wars Theory got treated, where they put him up and said, "This is what a man-child looks like," where he was saying it has to be perfect and stuff. That's not how it is.
No. You know, I will say this is Star Wars Theory. He has built a very successful channel. He did a passion project, and he's trying to get the capital together to do part 2 of his passion project.
Well, he's built an empire. I mean,
He
he's got
has.
he's got the Harry Potter theory. He's got all these different.
He has. And I have nothing but respect for him, not only as a fellow content creator, but as a fellow fan. And, his own personal backstory, his own history, his own personal life, there's a lot of reason to have to respect him, because he dealt with cancer as a young man, and that's not something easily overcome. And to see how some other individuals on YouTube have reacted to him, I think is rather petty, and I will call it as I see it. Now, am I glad that he's kind of gotten away from a certain faction of the Star Wars fandom that is quite literally very blatantly hateful? Yeah, I'm glad he got away from those people. I very much am, because he doesn't need those type of people in his life. But in terms of a season 2 for Kenobi, you're really going to have to deliver on these last 2 episodes. You really, really are.
Yeah, it sounds like a waste of time. On face value, it sounds like a
Yeah.
waste of time.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so much to do. Modern life is so busy. It's like
Yeah.
you've got to give us something to come back to
Yeah.
if you want
I
us to
agree.
pay attention.
Yeah, I agree. So, but I know you've got to bounce, and honestly, this was a good discussion, and I don't want to belabor the point, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I do want to thank, of course, my good friend, and I do call him that because I mean it, Zach Leary, for joining me this afternoon for the discussion. I want to thank everybody that was in the chat today. I hope you all enjoyed our discussion. For those of you that look at us on the replay, leave your comments down below with anything myself or me and Zach brought up, anything, what you loved, what you hated about this episode, what you thought thus far of Kenobi in general. Obviously, I will be continuing this series and everything to its end and everything. I will be back next Friday with to continuing the review of season 5 of Babylon 5, and me and Zach are planning a retro review and everything. We were going to do it this past Friday, but had some family matters come up and everything that had to postpone that and everything. But I will keep you all in the loop on my social media. So, but that being said, guys, y'all have a great afternoon, a great evening. We will see you all next time. And until next time, stay ambassadorial. And these are the ambassadors. Signing off.